What's up, guys? Welcome back to our Fish the Moment live stream. Super excited to start talking about how I caught my fish over the last week. I'm going to be showing you Navionics images, all of the spots using my down imaging and side imaging, showing you what the fish look like on the graph, how I approach them with different lures, how I position my boat, all kinds of stuff. And so it should be a really cool new format for the live stream. And so if you haven't checked out the live stream before, definitely grab some popcorn, find some time to sit down and enjoy the full hour-long session. And if you're watching this back on YouTube after the fact, then definitely leave a comment down below if you're enjoying the live streams. But I'm probably going to wait here for 4 or 5 minutes until everyone joins into the stream. And so if you're watching this back on YouTube after the live stream, just skip ahead to the 5 or 6 minute mark and you'll see me start talking about Navionics, stuff like that. The Fish Moment logo just up here will disappear. And so definitely just skip ahead if you are here for the content alone. But for everyone who is here for the stream, what's up, guys? It's great to see everyone again. We got Ulysses, we got Butch, Bree, JT's back at it. What's up, JT? Got Thomas, Roger, Dan, everyone back in here. A lot of the, we got Jim, Brady, all the guys as usual. And Stu Chumney with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Stu. Really appreciate it. We also got the $5 super chat from Daniel Wood to start us off. Really appreciate it, guys. And so, got a lot of guys in here as usual. We got Ray, Keith, my top spinner, everyone, Michael. So great to see everyone. And so based on some of the feedback I got from you guys over the last couple streams, I'm going to start transitioning the stream a little bit away from the map breakdowns where I look at other people's lakes. And I'm actually going to talk about how I've been catching fish every single week. I'm going to talk about my patterns, the electronics, things like that, all the images from my Sonar recordings, stuff like that, so that you guys can understand how I'm fishing, places I'm being successful on, the techniques I'm using right now, and it'll be the most relevant information that I can give you. And since I'm fishing now like 3 or 4 days a week with my full-time business, I'm actually able to do that. And so if you guys do want me to go back to doing some of the, Patreon map breakdowns, things like that, let me know as well. I want to make sure that you guys are getting what you want out of the streams, but I feel like people are really starting to enjoy this more seminar format for the live stream where I'm actually just sitting here, talking for 50 minutes or so about how I've been catching them. And because of that, I'm not going to be is involved in the chat, talking to everyone, answering as many questions during the stream. I'm just going to try to stay on topic and talk all the way through. But then after the main portion, the main content around the last 10 minutes of the stream, I will try to go through and answer as many questions as I can. And I may actually do like a Q&A stream. I think that's what Karax says. We want a Q&A day, Johnny. So that could be something to do, or maybe I'll post, if you want to ask questions of me, leave it in the comment of one of my videos, and then that way you guys can get your questions answered. So I'm thinking about doing something like that, maybe one stream a month, stuff like that. But for now, I'm going to stick with this format, and it'll probably be continuing to evolve as we go on. But I wanted to call it a few things. First thing is that I actually launched the first episode of the Fish Moment podcast with Travis Moran last week. And so let me pull this up over here. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to pull this up. I want to show you guys this because this is pretty cool stuff, and I'm really excited about it. And so I'm going to transition over to fishthemoment.com. If you guys haven't been to my website, you can go to fishthemoment.com. And if you go to the podcast tab, there's a new tab that you probably haven't seen before. Go to the podcast tab, click on that. You'll be taken to the Fish Moment podcast show notes. And you can go to read more underneath these show notes, and you can see Fish Moment Podcast #1, Summer Bass Fishing on Flooded Lakes. And if you go here, we actually have the podcast linked for you. We have videos specifically related to the topics we discussed in the podcast, links to articles about how to fish flooded water, and then our go-to baits with links to Tackle Warehouse. And then also some other, we have guest anglers. We had Miles Berghoff and FLW Pro on during the podcast. And the goal for this podcast, basically, guys, is so that you guys can listen to some content as you're driving to the lake or you're preparing for a fishing trip. Maybe you're putting tackle together, stuff like that out in your boat. And what you can do is go onto your iPhone And if you go onto your iPhone, you can go to the Apple Podcast app. And if you go to the Apple Podcast app, you can just type in Fish the Moment. And if you watch the last podcast back on my channel, you will see the instructions how to do that if you go back to my YouTube video on it. And we're really excited about this podcast because we're hoping that it will just spark some new ideas in your minds as you're driving to the lake, and hopefully we can give some really cool information and also kind of be a little more conversational, a little bit more lighthearted than maybe my videos are, where I just talk, instruction, maps, stuff like that. And so we're going to work that out as well. It's really fun making these podcasts with Travis. So definitely check out the Fish Moment podcast if you haven't yet on the website. Also, you can go to the podcast app, and it'll be posting actually episode 2 tonight, and then tomorrow morning on YouTube, so you can check out the second episode where we're talking about offshore bass fishing. And so if you do like the content too, go to the podcast app, leave a 5-star review, leave a comment with your review. Definitely would help me out if you haven't done that already. It just helps boost up the podcast, and the more times you can download and listen to it and stuff like that and subscribe to the podcast apps, it helps us get more sponsorship and makes us be able to do it, because it does take quite a bit of time investment every week. So anyways, got some more people joining in now. Got 81 people in, so let's see here. So people are saying, Daniel Wood saying fun podcast. People are liking this. That is good. Link the podcast on the channel. I will do that. That's definitely a good idea, JT. So anyways, enough of all of that. Let's see here. Enough of all that. Let's jump over then. I'm going to switch away from this, and I'm actually going to switch over to maps, and we're going to jump straight into the main content here. And so let me pull up Navionics here, transition over. So if you guys are watching back now on YouTube, welcome back. And for all the people in the live stream, I'm going to now go into my Professor Fish the Moment mode, do my 50-minute lecture for you guys. Apparently that's what you guys want. And then I will be answering questions after the stream. So if you do have a question, just leave @FishTheMoment in the chat box, and I'll try to answer those questions as best I can at the end of the stream. But basically what we're going to do today is I want to talk to you about how I've been catching fish on Table Rock Lake this last week. I spent 4 days on Table Rock last week, and I learned a ton. Every time I'm going out fishing nowadays, guys, I am learning so much just because I can spend more time on the water. I'm seeing a lot of different situations and things that, I haven't really seen on a lot of these lakes. And when I was really good at bass fishing back when I was like 2021 in college, I was fishing all the time. And I was fishing, 3 to 5 tournaments a month. And so I was on my game. And as I've been kind of out of fishing for a little bit and then started making my YouTube videos, I haven't been as able to be on the water as much. Now with my new business, I'm on the water all the time. So this last week, I spent a lot of time fishing Table Rock around the Shell Knob area, and I was prepping for on-the-water fishing lessons, and I took a few guys out actually fishing out here, and we caught some really good fish. I had a couple days where I caught like 40 fish. I think we caught like probably 20 fish in one of the lessons where we weren't even really trying to catch them. We were focusing on electronics and stuff, and so the fight is on fire on Table Rock. But there's some interesting stuff that I want to share with you guys about some of the areas I was fishing. And this is the kind of more of the river section. It's called the White River of Table Rock Lake, kind of in this area. It's the Shell Knob area for people who might know about it. And then you have the Kings River down here. And if we take a look at this lake, if we go over to Google Earth, you'll see that this part of the lake is pretty clear. You may have anywhere from 6 to 10 feet of water visibility. So it's a very, very clear section of this lake. And if you kind of go through some of these rivers and kind of get back into some of these cuts, you'll see the water gets a little bit dirtier. So the water back in here has maybe, let's say, a foot to 3 feet of visibility as you get way back into the rivers, and then it's 10 foot of visibility out in the mouths of these pockets. And so I have some graph images of fish I've been catching offshore, both further out towards the main lake in the super clear water, and then some fish that are way back here in the back of the creek. And the thing that's really interesting is that as you move back in these creeks and you move out to the main lake, the fish will set up in different depth ranges. The thermocline is different, and what I'm fishing for as far as species and what I'm fishing with as far as baits are all completely different. And so I want to talk to you through how I kind of made those adjustments to find bigger fish, to find more fish, things like that, throughout the fishing day, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy. And so let's see here. Let me switch over to let's see my sonar images. Give me 1 second here, guys. Turn that off. Come over here. Pull this up. There we go. Sorry about that. I got lots of screens going on. I got so much stuff going on because I want to share a lot with you guys. So as far as sonar recordings go, I was finding that a lot of these fish on the Clearwater section of Table Rock, the area where, if we go back over here to the map, where you had the 10 foot of water visibility out here, I'm finding that on the very clear sections of this lake, I was finding fish anywhere from 30 all the way down to 55 feet of water, and these are bass. So a lot of guys are thinking, man, I think if I fish deeper than 15 feet of water, I'm fishing super deep. Well, out here on Table Rock, some of these fish I was catching were in 50 to 55 feet of water. And if we kind of take a look at some of these areas, if you notice, this is a nice little point that I graphed over. And if you look right here, this is actually a spot I showed in my last live stream, and I graphed it a couple weeks ago, and there was fish all over this point, and I graphed over it the next week, and they were still there. And basically, you see all these dots stacked up here, and this is just a mega wad of fish. And these fish, in the last time I showed this sonar recording, if we actually go back over here, let me pull that up really quick. If we go over here, this is the I call this the mega school. This is the mega school of fish here. And I don't actually have the depth range on, but you can see how many fish are just all over the screen on this image. And here's that same kind of tree. And these fish were actually setting up a little bit shallower when I was finding them a couple weeks ago. They were setting up in anywhere from 20 to 35 feet of water. And so some of these fish were up here in 20, some of these fish were down here in that 35 feet. But then once we got in, basically just 1 week later, what I found is that those fish moved a little bit deeper in just a week. And so a lot of these fish, this is now further down this point. And what I found is that some of these fish were setting up anywhere from, if you look at this grid over here, anywhere from about 35 feet of water all the way down to about 40 feet of water. And this was first thing in the morning. And so I graphed over these fish first thing in the morning, and I was catching them out here in 40 feet of water. And I have a video coming to my channel this week about how I was catching them. I was actually catching them on a hair jig, casting that thing out, letting it sink to 40 feet of water, reeling it 5 or 6 times, letting it fall back down, reeling it 5 or 6 times, and I was crushing them on this spot on a hair jig. And then I went and I continued kind of looking for other areas where I could catch fish. I kind of knew this school was here, and so I started looking on other points, and just to kind of give you an idea of what this point looks like. Switch back over to Navionics real quick, show you what I'm looking at. So with Navionics, the spot that I was fishing is just a point that's in the mouth of the Kings River, and it's a point that's right here. If you look at this point right here is where I was catching these fish. And what was happening is that you have this main river channel that swings in. It's 87 feet of water right here, and it comes up against this nice point. And all the spots I'm going to be showing you where I've been catching these fish are places where these points kind of come out and they have a nice sharp drop right up against them. And what I'm finding is that these bass have been kind of setting up on these, I call them channel swing points or bluff ends. You'll hear people call them a lot of different things. Channel swing points are basically where the channel swing like this cuts right up against a point, and it goes from 20 feet of water out to 80 feet of water. And the bluff end, which is kind of the same thing, is where you have a bluff wall, like right here. It's very, very, very deep. It goes from 4 feet of water down to 80 feet of water within half a cast length of the bank. And then you have these points that stick out as you come to the end of a bluff. So you may hear channel swing points, you may hear bluff ends. These are terms that fishermen use. They all mean the same thing. People just like to use confusing language so people can't learn to catch fish, and they can just say, "How'd you catch him today?" "Oh yeah, I caught him on a jig on bluff ends." What does that mean? People don't know. But they can tell the reporters that, and no one knows what they're talking about. And so that's always really cool. And so if you look at this this area right here, this channel swing is swinging up against it right there. You have these really nice points that stick out, and the fish were setting up right around here, right in this section. This is that image that I just showed where it's about 40 feet of water. And so if I transition back over to my thing over here is real quick, I'm just going to use this image instead, but you can look right here, 40 foot. That's where these fish were. These fish were right here on this point. And I was finding that the fish in the mornings were pulling up closer to the top of these points, kind of up on top here. And then later in the day, I actually started catching fish deeper. I found that the fish actually transitioned out here, and I was putting my boat in about 50 to 55 feet of water. And this group of fish that was setting up here in the mornings in that 35 to 40 foot range slid down the point, and they were then hanging out down here. And I was catching these fish on a hair jig in the morning up on top of the point, and a swim bait as well. And I caught them vertically fishing with a drop shot right here. And so these fish were constantly shifting and changing and moving, and it's really cool because you can really use your electronics to relocate these schools. And what I find a lot of people do when they start fishing offshore is they get really caught up on places that they graph and they see fish. So they'll graph over this area at 8 a.m. in the morning, and they'll see these fish, and they'll think, ooh, these fish are here in 40 feet of water. They're going to stay in 40 feet of water all day, and I should be able to pull up and just crush them on the spot. So they'll drive over this point, they'll come and they'll drive like this, they'll drive right over the top of it, and then they'll drop their waypoint right there, and then they'll fish it, they'll catch some fish, they'll leave, and they'll come back at 2 hours later. And a lot of guys don't regraph these areas before they fish them again. They don't drive back over them, and so they'll stop and they'll just make casts on this waypoint again. Boom, 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 try to make the same cast, and they don't catch any fish. And they're like, what's going on? Why did I not catch anything? Well, what happened is that those fish actually moved from being up here to being down here. And they basically just shifted down this point, and they were sitting now down here in 55 feet of water. And you can make as many casts as you want in 35 feet. You're not going to get bit. But if you make a drop down here in 55, you'll catch them every cast. So that's why I've mentioned it probably several times in my videos already. I'm going to keep reiterating this point. Regraph your areas before you fish them. Always graph areas before you fish them offshore. Regardless of if you've seen fish there 5 times that day, always graph over areas again, because those fish can move and they can reposition like crazy on these points. And they can move from being up on top of the point up here, down to the sides of the point, into this side of the point, off the very tip of the point. They can move anywhere, even up shallower on the points. And so you really want to make sure you're utilizing your electronics to reposition and relocate those fish every time you pull up to a new offshore area. So hopefully that's hopefully there's a lot of good stuff there. And so, one second here, I'm just kind of reading through some comments. Let's see here. So as I go to the next spot, basically, I'm going to just keep scrolling through here. Oh, here, by the way, I highlighted the Thermocline. If you take a look at the Thermocline in this lake right now, Thermocline was setting up anywhere from about 40 feet of water right around here. And it was really interesting, so I was seeing the Thermocline up here in like 40 feet of water, but later in the day, the Thermocline actually got deeper, it seemed like, which was really weird. I don't really know why, but the Thermocline seemed like in just a couple days, or like even later in the day, it dropped down where the Thermocline was in like that 50-foot range. And so I don't know if it was that they were pulling a lot of water or what was happening, but that Thermocline was shifting and changing even throughout the day. And those fish were getting deeper, which I've never really experienced that before because I haven't been on the lake as much as I have been. But day to day, like I'm finding that the Thermocline is dropping like almost a foot per day. And so it'll, or sometimes even like 3 or 4 feet per day. And so, 2 weeks ago, the Thermocline on this lake was up at 20 feet of water. It was way up here, and these fish were not setting up on this point. Then a week ago, basically, last week of June, the Thermocline was in 17 feet. First week of July, the Thermocline was in 25 feet. The second week of July, the Thermocline is now in 40 feet. Now the Thermocline's in like 50 feet. And so the Thermocline's constantly shifting and moving. If you don't know what the Thermocline is, I did make a full video explaining what it is, and it's called How Deep to Fish Offshore. And it's on my channel. I posted it like 2 or 3 videos ago, so definitely go check that one out. It's a pretty good video. But we'll kind of continue to look at that Thermocline as we look through these areas. But here's my next spot. And this is the thumbnail for this live stream, and so I'm sure a lot of you guys are like, okay, what do I, what is this area, and why are these the trickiest bass to locate offshore? Why are they the trickiest bass? And so I want to explain this because what I find is that these type of areas where you have this very, very sharp point where it almost falls off a cliff right here, you'll find that there's lots of good fish that pull up on these areas first thing in the mornings on a lot of these deeper, clear lakes. And so to give you an idea of what this point is, it's basically this point right here. And so you can kind of get a theme. My spots are not very far apart. And I graphed over this area. I graphed over basically all these points. I just came and I graphed over every single one of these points, and I was just looking for fish all through here. And I found them on 4 or 5 areas, but what I'm finding is that, not every single one of these points had fish on them. But a lot of these points did have like creek channels swinging up close to them, and you would think they'd all be good, but I found that only certain points were good. And so this spot right here, if we take a look at this right here where that kind of that red box is with the line going through it, that's almost identical. That's almost exactly where this spot is right here. And basically what it is just a little high spot that comes up into 10 feet of water. And 10 feet of water is really, really shallow, guys. It's not deep at all. And if you we go scroll through this image, you'll see I actually pulled up the Thermocline, and the Thermocline in this area was 45 feet deep, almost 50 feet deep. And I scanned this about 10 minutes after I scanned the last spot. And so the Thermocline just across the lake was a little bit, deeper. So even going from like here to here, the Thermocline, it looks like on the graph, was like 5 feet deeper, which is weird. I'm not like a biologist or a fisheries biologist or know about nature, stuff like that. All I know is on the graph, I can see the Thermocline, and I know when I graph the areas, and that's about all I can tell you on that. But just so you know, the Thermocline will shift and change throughout the day, parts of the lake, things like that. And so if you look at this area, you can see that there's a bunch of fish up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ton of dots. There's also some fish kind of out here. 1, 2, 3 dots kind of suspended off these trees. And these fish, what they would do is they would pull up, and I've been catching fish off the spot for like a month now, and they'll pull up on top of these points like up here. And what I've been doing is I'm able to catch them on a hair jig and a topwater, because you can see these fish are only like 4 or 5 feet from the surface. So you can fish a topwater across this point, get them fish to come up and bite, and also fish that hair jig, work it off the bottom, catch some fish off this point. Again, I have a video coming up this week, which actually I'll be showing these exact spots and showing me catch fish off these exact spots right after I graph them. So you'll probably see these images again. I'll explain them again in the video. So kind of linking it all together in a more cohesive way with actually me fishing. So hopefully everything will be good. But with all this, thank you everyone too who's promoting my lessons. I really appreciate that. Everyone in the comments, Keith, Kid Iraq, and everyone in here, Timo, appreciate that, guys. Definitely have enjoyed doing all the lessons, and I had a couple really good ones today. And so if you guys do want me to help break down your lake, I can show you these sonar recordings, because obviously I want to share these sonar recordings with you guys, and I want to be able to show you how what I'm doing on my lake. But every lake is different, every day is different, every week is different. And so I don't care at all if I give up all the spots I'm catching my fish, because these spots are probably not going to be any good in about a week or a week and a half. And then I'm going to have to relocate all brand new areas. And so you can go fish these spots till your eyes fall out, and you're not going to catch any fish if you don't find them on your graph. And so what I want to teach you guys is how to figure out how to find the fish. And like even, the fish were sitting up like on these points here. I checked further down the lake down here, and none of these points where the creek channel swung by it had any fish on them. They were all empty. And so just from going around this bend in the river, the fish are set up completely different over here. I'm looking for completely different cover, completely different structures, all kinds of stuff. So my goal with this, guys, is to give you some general ideas on how to find fish, some patterns that are working for me. But even going like down into the river here, which you'll see in a little bit, the fish act completely different here than they do here, than they do here. And they do completely different stuff. Like down in this part of the lake, I was catching them back in the creeks, finding them schooling and stuff back in the creeks. And then I was fishing in 40 feet of water out here. And then down here, I was catching them in 15 feet of water on like ledges. And so crazy how these lakes will be so different parts of the lakes. And Table Rock is a big lake, and so it won't be always the same on your fisheries either. So the one-on-one lessons are a great way where I have a lot of knowledge about all the different types of fisheries, and I can share how to adjust and change. And that's what those one-on-one lessons are good for. And if you do want to book a one-on-one video lesson, by the way, you can go onto my website. You go to fishthemoment.com. You can just go to my fishing lessons, and you have a one-on-one video lesson right here, and you can book that. We'll go over Google Hangout. I'll show you graph images, break down your lake, talk about strategies, and the strategies are different on almost every lake that I go to, and so we can talk about how to prep for tournaments, what to look for on your graph. I have graph images from a ton of different types of lakes that I can share and relate to your home fisheries. And also, if you can't, have a good internet or something for the lessons and the breakdowns, or for the one-on-one video lesson, I also offer map breakdowns on my website where you can go and actually purchase some spots that I pick out with areas, and I have descriptions of the areas, baits, all kinds of stuff. And I have total of 9 maps up there right now. I'm trying to add more every single week as I get more bandwidth. I'm doing a lot of random stuff right now, the new business, so it's taking me a little bit to get everything organized. But enough of that. Let's jump over to 1 second here. Jump back over here really quick. Back over to the map. There we go. So anyways, enough of that pitch. So if you are taking a look at this area then, so this is that point that was setting up here. Kind of got off a little bit on a tangent there, but this is that point, and they were pulled up on top of this point in the morning, and they were chewing. And I graphed over the spot, and you guys might be worried, okay, it's 10 foot of water, 15 feet of water. You graph over them, and then you fish them. Is that going to scare the fish? No. It does not scare them. They were not bothered. I spun around, graphed over these fish, turned around, made my first cast up there, and caught one. And caught a couple off the spot. So they're not bothered by you graphing over them. And basically, what I found, though, is just like the last spot that I was talking about, where those fish were sitting up here in 35, and then they pulled down to 55. On this spot, the fish were pulling up in 10, and these fish actually, later in the day when I came back, had actually dropped down to here. And they were in the mornings, they were way up here, and they dropped down into these. You can actually see there's some deep trees here. If I kind of increase the sensitivity, you can see there's a bunch of trees here. And I was finding them actually, all these fish drop down into 40 and 50 feet of water, and I was catching them on a drop shot, dropping it vertically underneath the boat again, and caught 4 or 5 fish in a row off this spot during a one-on-one lesson. And we actually caught fish here in the morning. Actually have lessons where I'd go out in people's boats, help them set up electronics, stuff like that. We caught some here in the morning on shaky heads, hair jigs, stuff like that, and then caught them on drop shots further out here. And these fish were more largemouth, and these fish were more spotted bass. But really cool just to see how these fish move. And these fish, we were catching them at 7:30 in the morning, and then at 1 o'clock we were catching them down here. And so it took them a while to kind of transition from being up here down to here, but it's really not that big of a move. You see how big that cliff is. Basically, they come up here when there's low light conditions, maybe the sun's not quite out yet. They'll pull up on top of these points to feed, and then as that sun comes out, they want to get in the shade. They don't want to be super hot. The way I think about it is, I like to go for bike rides and stuff in the morning, and it's great to go bike riding in the morning when it's 70 degrees. It's nice and cool outside. But then when it gets to be about 90 degrees and I haven't ridden my bike yet, I'm no, I'm not going to go for a bike ride today. It's 90 degrees. I want to be in the house, in the air conditioning, in the shade. That's how these bass are. In the morning, they'll go exercise, they'll go move up, they'll go eat those shad in the morning. Then when that sun comes out, they're going to be lazy, drop back down into the shade of these trees, in the shade of this big bluff wall, and they're going to be feeding up. And, what they'll do is they're not going to be actively feeding on this area here. They're actively chasing and moving around. These fish are not actively feeding. But the way I kind of explain it is, if you're, I guess the way I always explain it to people is, if you're sitting around the house, in a given day when it's a lazy Sunday, on your work day you may work, or you may eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you just eat those 3 meals. You're good. You're just gonna eat those 3 meals, and you're nothing. You're not gonna eat anything else the rest of the day. But then on your days a Sunday when you're just lazying around, things like that, you may eat your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner. But if I came by with some cheese fries or some ice cream, and I was hey, you want some of these cheese fries? You're not going to turn them down. And so it's the same thing with these bass. When I come by with that little drop shot and that robo-worm and I'm shaking it in front of their face, those fish aren't actively feeding, but they're also not going to pass up an easy meal. And so you can catch some fish while they're inactive way off these drops out here. And one thing I want to make crystal clear is that this works really well on deep clear lakes where the Thermocline is setting up in 40, 50 feet of water, things like that. This is not going to work, though, very well on a lot of dirtier water lakes, like a lake or let me think. It's not going to work as well on your dirty water lakes like a Pickwick Lake, a Kentucky Lake, where you have offshore ledges, where the ledge may top out in 15 feet and then it drops off, because that thermocline may only be in 20 feet of water. And those bass are, instead of dropping down these trees down here in 40, 50 feet like they do here where this thermocline is, what they might do is the thermocline might be sitting up here, and so those bass don't really pull out and get really deep, and so you can't pull up and drop shot on them and stuff like that. What you have to do is, you'll see that they're all suspended up here. If the thermocline's up here in 25 foot, they'll be in that thermocline right up through here, just above the thermocline, and they'll be suspended. And so what happens is that on a lake like a Kentucky Lake, when these fish aren't up on top of these ledges feeding, they're really hard to catch because they basically just suspend over the super deep water. But on a lake like Table Rock, when that thermocline's really deep, you can catch them because that thermocline's way down here. They'll get on the bottom or close to the bottom off the end of these ledges, and you can catch them. And so that's, again, differences in lakes, differences in approaches. So don't try to take everything I say and generalize it to every lake. Make sure you're paying attention to what I'm talking about as far as water clarity, the type of lake I'm fishing. And we'll actually show you areas like this in a second. They're near the river end of Table Rock. I need to hurry up. I'm already 30 minutes in. Near the river end of Table Rock, where some fish are setting up on similar areas, but they don't get as deep because that thermocline isn't as deep. So hopefully that all makes sense. That was a lot of just random information to throw out there, but I do want to call out Keith the Trucker for the $25 super chat. What's up, Keith? He says, what topwater was your choice and color of creature on the wobblehead? And so let me pull up some stuff real quick for you, Keith, on that. Let me pull up Tackle Warehouse really quick. So the bait that I was throwing that I really like on these schooling fish, transition this over here, is, give me 1 second, is a wake bait. A wake bait is so good at calling up fish from deep water. And the one that I've been messing around with right now is one of the ones, it's a little bit pricey, but it's not super pricey, but it's the ones that have been working for me, is this Jackal Mikey wake bait. And right now they have the junior version. I like the normal version of this bait, so they actually don't have this on Tackle Warehouse, the bigger version. But if you can get the bigger version of this wake bait, the little one too, I've tried the junior, it works pretty well too. I think I have it in the, I bought the one, the Sartreuse Shad. I think that's why they're out of stock, because I bought a few of these. But that works really well, especially in that clear water. That little white profile will work really well. Or the Aurora Black is another really good color. And basically, this wake bait, you can just slowly reel that reel handle, and it'll call those fish up out of that deep water in the clear water really, really well. And it works better for me than a walking bait like a Sammy or a Zara Spook. And then the other bait that I also throw is, it was over here, where was that thing? Is a classic bait, but it's just the Cotton Cordell jointed redfin. This thing is just a really good, just classic bait, and I throw it in the Smoky Joe. It's this white bone color one. This is a great bait. You can also fish it in the chrome colors, but that's an our wake bait. It's cheaper, it's easier to find, it works super well. And that's just a really good largemouth bait. You'll call those fish up by like 10, 15 feet of water, whether they're on the top of points, on the top of trees, all kinds of stuff. And then for the creature bait, I'm just throwing a green pumpkin striking menace grub. And I always throw green pumpkin when I'm fishing offshore in clear water. I don't think it matters too much. When you get deeper than like 15 feet, the fish can't tell the difference between watermelon and green pumpkin at all. So that was that. So let me pull this back over here. So again, thank you so much, Keith, for the super chat. So JT saying cheese fries. I could use myself some cheese fries. But let's see here. So as far as the the smarter spots, just want to show you a couple more graph images real quick of spots where I was finding them. Here's a spot where there was some deeper trees out here that were really good. I was actually calling up some fish on that jointed redfin and that wake bait out of these trees. These trees top out in about 10, 12 feet of water. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots dotted up on this thing. And you can see just right through here, there's these standing trees, and you see those dots. If you see those dots, and these are most likely going to be largemouth. What I found is that a lot of the spotted bass were setting up in that deeper water. So they were setting up in that 30 30 to 40 foot of water. And then a lot of the largemouth we're setting up shallower, up in that 10 to 15 feet of water. And so if you want to try to target the bigger fish, the bigger largemouth, find those fish that are stacked up a little bit shallower, or like in the tops of some of these trees that top out in 5 to 10 feet of water. Those are where you're going to find your largemouth as opposed to spotted bass, which is good for the tournament anglers. And then here's another little school I found off another point that was just, they're all stacked up right there. And these were, again, spotted bass. And some of these were pretty good spots. I caught, I think, 3 keeper 15-inch spotted bass off this spot. And it's just a rounded point, and there's dots all over the screen here. And those are just a little wad of fish. And if we keep going, so that's in the clear water. So I want to transition now from the clear water, transition back over to some of the dirtier water. By the way, why would like 500 people show up to the last live stream? There's like 150 now. I don't know if it was like because of iCast and people were like going crazy on my channel or what was happening, but it seems like there's a lot fewer people on than last week. I don't know if it was just that one thumbnail. People were like, oh, I need to check out that video. And then they're like, never mind. But I'm glad at least 161 people are here. I'm very proud of that still. And I'm glad that everyone can join in as best they can. I know it's kind of tough on a Tuesday night in the summer. You guys want to be out fishing, doing stuff, but I'm glad for everyone who can join in to the stream. Really appreciate it. So next up, I want to talk about how I transitioned from fishing in this clear water out here, kind of up in this area of the lake where you have that deeper clear water, and then how I transitioned to fishing in the dirtier water up these rivers. And what I find is that normally on Table Rock and a lot of deeper clear lakes, you're going to find a lot more spotted bass and a lot of smaller bass in general too in the clear water in the summertime. A lot of the bigger largemouth, they're going to live in these areas, but they're a lot harder to get to bite. They're a lot harder to catch. And so what I'm finding is that you can catch a lot of good fish up these river arms where you get a little bit dirtier water, because mainly these fish are going to be largemouth. And these fish are also going to be a little bit easier to catch because they're going to be in shallower water, and that dirtier water kind of disguises your bait a little bit better, and so those bass are more likely to eat. And so when you're fishing in 10 foot of water visibility, you really need to be careful with the baits you're picking and things like that, because those fish get a really good look at it. So it has to be very natural to them. And so with this, as I normally, like my plan is I pull up in this clear water, I pull up on those shallow points, things like that. And if I can pull up on the right 2 or 3 points, I can normally put a solid limit of spotted bass in the boat, as long as I'm finding schools of like bigger spotted bass. And I'll have videos coming out soon, guys, on how you can identify the bigger bass on your graph versus smaller bass, which is really helpful on a lake like Table Rock. And I've got to a point now where I can graph over a point. I can tell you these fish are 2-pounders, these fish are 3-pounders, these fish are 1-pounders. And then we drop down and we catch them, and it's exactly what we catch. And I did that in one of my on-the-water fishing lessons this last weekend, and it was really cool. And so if you do want to book an on-the-water fishing lesson with me, again, go to fishthemoment.com. You can book an on-the-water lesson. I'm actually really, really low on availability right now, guys. So if we pull up my lessons, I don't think I can open up some more spots. But if we go over here to the full day, I have 2 spots open in August, and that's all my availability. I'm all the way out, and I'm done through September. September is pretty much fully booked. I can probably open up a couple more spots at the end of September, but I'm going to be in actually North Carolina for half of September. And then, I don't really have very many times other than that. That's pretty much all I have available on my website. So if you do want to book a lesson with me, I would book now, because these spots are going to fill up quick. And, I can do the Northwest Arkansas area and the Central Arkansas area. And also, I'm going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina for a few days. And all those spots are still available in September. So September 10th, 11th, 13th, and 14th in Raleigh. But I only have 4 spots available while I'm there. And there's some really good interest. I think some guys are thinking about signing up in the next couple days. So I would go if you're interested in a North Carolina fishing trip. If you live in North Carolina, South Carolina even, and you want to just come up for the weekend, it's probably your best chance to catch me. I'm only going to be coming once a year to these different areas. Maybe I might not come for 2 or 3 years. So if you do want to get a lesson with me on the water, where I can walk you through my approach to finding fish, how to catch fish, how to better use your electronics to make yourself a more efficient angler, book a lesson now. But anyways, back over to my graph recordings. So When I'm running up these rivers, basically, what I normally am looking for is I'm looking first for that thermocline, because out here on the thermocline, the thermocline was anywhere from 30 to 50 feet of water. But as you move further back into these dirty water sections of these lakes, like back in these rivers, like the Kings River here, the thermocline will get a lot shallower. And so if we take a look as we get further into some of these images, here's a school of bass I found on this ledge, and you'll see the thermocline as I zoom it in is actually up here now in about 25 feet of water. So this is only about a half mile into the mouth of the Kings River, and already we see the thermocline is about half as deep as it was in the mouth of the Kings River, which is crazy. And just getting in that little bit dirtier water and a little bit more color in the water, and obviously for other reasons too that I can't explain because I'm not a biologist, this thermocline is shallower. And so if we take a look at the spot and we kind of know that thermocline's down here in 25 feet, you can see that there's actually a school of bass set up on this little point. And I pulled up on the spot. I didn't catch any actually. I got one bite on a hair jig, and I threw a jig and stuff down there as well, football jig. Never got any bites. And I would expect these fish to bite really well on like a swim bait, a flutter spoon, or a hair jig, because they were suspended pretty high off the bottom. And you notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 bass, and then even some up here. So I'm thinking that this is a good school of bass, most likely largemouth, because as you get further into the dirty water, the likelihood of catching largemouth is a lot better. And these were pretty big returns on my graph too, so they look like pretty good fish. And so with this spot, I thought maybe I could pull up here. I think I fished at like 9 o'clock. And I thought, well, maybe if I pulled up here at like 7 a.m., I could have caught them better. Or maybe I have to pull up here in the afternoon and try to see if they're up here. But I came back to this spot at like 1 o'clock and all these fish were gone. And so I know that these fish are probably just pulling up out of this channel, moving up here in the mornings to feed. And most of the time when you get to this really a little bit dirtier water, these fish are a little bit tough to catch when they're suspended really high off the bottom. Normally I like to catch them when they're suspended 2 to 3 feet off the bottom. But there were definitely some fish here. I got a bite on the hair jig, so I know there were some fish in this area, but I think I fished a little bit too late in the day. I fished at 9 a.m. I probably should have been there at like 6 or 7 a.m. I probably could have caught these fish. And that's super, super common in the summertime, is that you'll pull up on areas, you'll see fish on the graph, you'll think, man, this spot is juicy, and you won't catch any fish. And you're like, why am I not catching them here? It's not because they're not bass or they're not fish a lot of times. A lot of times what it is that they're just not actively feeding at that moment, and you just haven't hit the timing right. And I've talked about that in a lot of other videos, so you can check out some of my other videos on that. But I wouldn't get discouraged if you see this on your graph. I see this all the time and I don't catch fish. I'll see fish on there. I'll be like, ooh, that spot's money. I fish it. I don't get bit. I don't get discouraged. I just think, well, I'm going to try another 10 spots. And I hope that 1 out of 10 of those spots has a group of fish that's actively feeding, and I can put them in the boat. And anyways, we got another super chat here from Butch Payton. He says, your instruction is amazing. Since our video lesson, I hung on our offshore fishing. Maumelle has been a tough one for me, but lately I've been putting them in the boat. Thank you, Butch. Thanks for the $20 super chat, and thanks for booking the lesson again. I'm glad that the lesson helped on Lake Maumelle, and it's really tough lake in general, but if you can stick with it and do the offshore stuff we talked about in the lesson, you're going to be putting good ones in the boat all summer and also into the winter. That's a pretty good winter offshore lake too, so I'm glad that you're catching them. So let's see here. And then TN Outdoors says, do football jigs work this time of year? For sure. That's one of my go-to baits, and I always throw it in green pumpkin. Green pumpkin with a green pumpkin striking rage craw. It's like one of my top 3 favorite baits for offshore bass fishing this time of year. And so I actually threw a football jig on this spot too. It's a pretty good little deal, but didn't get any bites. And so then let's keep looking at some areas. So another spot that I saw that looked really good up the Kings River is this brush pile. This brush pile is like, I was like, dang, that's going to be a good brush pile. Don't make that like a, JT, don't make that like a meme either with me doing this. That is not good. I'm sure you will now that I said. I shouldn't have said anything. Why did I? Anyways, I'm just waiting for the meme train to start. Fortunately, a lot of the guys who are watching this don't know what memes are. And so that's very helpful for me and my my sanity. So I'm not getting them posted all over my social media. But I'm probably just opening Pandora's box by even mentioning this. Oh gosh, I already see JT and Kid Iraq are scheming in the comments. Perfect. So anyways, so this spot right here though looked money. If you look at it, you actually see that there is some bait fish out here. You can see some fish kind of dotted on the screen. You actually see these fish, they're stacked up really high in a column. Those look like a smokestack. And just guys, to give you an idea of what I think some of these fish are, I'm thinking that these are actually bass. And I think that these are crappie. And the reason I'm making that assumption is normally when I find crappie on a brush pile, I see that the crappie are stacked very much vertically, and they're right on top of each other, and they're also going to be a little bit smaller dots, and they're going to be very close together. And then when I'm finding that they're largemouth, you'll see that there's a lot more space between some of these dots. You can see there's a big opening area in here. And I mentioned this in other streams, but I feel like bass, they like to have their personal bubble. They don't like a lot of largemouth getting close to them, and so they sometimes might bump shoulders with a bass or something, just like we do when we're walking down the street. But you're not going to walk shoulder to shoulder with 7 people, as you're walking down the street. Where crappie, they'll get side to side, they'll get really tight together. They love to be, kind of really tightly packed in on these areas. I like to get more vertical. The bass are more horizontal and they spread out more. And I'm thinking that some of these bass are probably feeding on some of these crappie. But I fished this area, again, didn't get any bites. And I didn't actually come back and fish this later in the day. I probably should have. I'm thinking that I fished this around like 9:30. And I'm thinking if that sun came up and it got to be like 1 o'clock, I was thinking these fish might pull back into this brush pile and feed a little bit better. And I might be able to catch them again on like a football jig, crankbait, stuff like that. But never came back to this spot, but it's another good looking area with lots of bait around it. And this is the type of area I'm definitely looking for. And as you get further up into these dirtier creeks, further up into these river systems, I really, really like to fish the brush piles. If you can find brush piles back in these creeks here, they're going to be really, really good. And you want to look for brush piles that have dots around them, have bait fish around them. And a lot of times, if you're struggling to catch big fish on your deep, clear lakes in the summer, out here in the main lake, you're catching a lot of spotted bass, a lot of smaller bass. Run back into the dirty water where you see it kind of get more brown and tinted, find some brush piles, and you're going to be catching some big fish. So one other spot I want to show you, we're running a little bit low on time here, so let me pull up one more spot really quick. Whoops. It's when I went actually up the the James River the next day, and I got a tip from one of my subscribers actually that there were a bunch of fish up the Kings River. He was catching like 25 pounds of bass up there, and so I was like, I want to go up the James River, and I'm mixing up James and Kings, but it's the James River. And he's like, I want to go catch some fish on the. I was like, I want to go catch some big fish on the James. Sorry, it's like I did like 2 lessons a day, or I talked for 2 hours straight. Plus, I did 4 lessons yesterday. And so I've been talking over like the last couple of days, almost as much as I've been asleep. And so I've been talking for like 7, 8, 9 hours straight. And so my brain's all fried from talking so much. But I have a couple of days off and I have more lessons, so I'll be good to go. I'll recoup my battery. But maybe I need to change these live streams to a different day even too. But if you look at these areas, there's a bunch of areas up the James. And the James River, if we take a look at the map, is a lot further up the lake. So if you go way up here, this is where the Shell Knob area is. The James River is way up here, and I launch over here at Cape Fair. And Cape Fair is a pretty good area, and you can see that this part of the lake is much dirtier again. A lot dirtier, a lot shallower. And what I found is that there were some really good fish pulling up on a lot of these points. So like this point right here, this point right here, this point over here, and this is what all these areas are I'm about to show you. And so if you look at these points, you can see there's all kinds of bait, there's all kinds of dots all over. And this spot actually is the main point out in front of the boat ramp here. And it looks super good. And I was like, man, I'm going to be able to crush him off this point. You saw him all over the graph. You're like, that's going to be a good spot. Well, unfortunately, there were about 75 boats driving past here because I think there was actually a big bass tournament that morning. So people were coming in to weigh in their fish after the first hour. And they were driving right over these fish all day, which really spooked them. And then there was another group of fish that was around the corner on this point over here, and I had the exact same issue, where I actually graphed over this point and I saw some really good fish. If you look right here, you can see there is a good group of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dots. That I would expect those are probably 3 to 4 pounders. If you look at these dots here, they're going to be a little bit thicker, I guess, and they're a little bit stronger return. And these are going to be big bass. And I was thinking that I was going to be able to crush them here. But if you actually look, see all this crap that's up in the water? That's the wake from boats. I graphed over this area, and there are so many people driving across this point that all of this stuff up here is actually boat wakes. And that just screwed up the fish. They would not bite because there was just too much boat wakes. I went here on a Saturday, which was a mistake. I think if I came back here on like a Tuesday, I probably would have caught like 20 pounds off that spot. Or maybe not 20, but I feel like I could have caught at least a couple, like 3 or 4 pounders off this area. And so I'm a little bit bummed. I know the bite was really good there too. And so I went on a Saturday though, which then you could see all the boat traffic. So what I did is to kind of accommodate, I actually ran further up the river, and I ran far away from the boat ramp as I kind of could to still find some good areas. And I ran to this point finally, and there were fewer boats, fewer people kind of going around, which is a little bit better. And if you take a look at this spot where I found some fish, boom, this is like the mother lode right here. This is another like the megawatt of fish. You see there's still some boat wakes in the area. People were still kind of driving around, but there were so many fish down here. You can see them everywhere. They actually pulled up, and I caught 3 fish in a row on a hair jig. They were just like 1.5 to 2 pound largemouth, nothing big. I think a lot of the bigger largemouth were still spooked by all the boat wakes, but there's a big group of them here. And I think if I had been out there on a day when there wasn't so much boat traffic, I probably would have had a really, really good day. And so these type of areas I'm looking for, though, up in, these fish were up in 10 to 20 feet of water, somewhere in there. And on the other part of the lake, they were down 30 to 50 feet of water. And so again, just keep that in mind as you run to different parts of the lakes, further up these rivers and stuff, these fish will get shallower. They'll set up in 20 foot of water as opposed to setting up in 50 feet of water down the clear water. So anyways, let's see what Timo says. My wife now knows Tuesday nights are for kicking back with Johnny and drinking the Fish the Moment Kool-Aid. Oh, I'm glad that she lets you sit down and watch that. That's awesome, though. Thanks for the update there. That's really cool. That's really cool of your wife to do that too. It's funny. I think that a lot of guys are saying, or Bass and North says, yeah, a few lakes I fish, the best spots are in high traffic areas for boats, for sure. And I'm going to make a video about that here in a little bit of how to deal with that, because it can be really, really frustrating when you go out to the lake on that day and there's just boat traffic everywhere. And like, you'll find all these fish, but there's just boat wakes everywhere and people are driving like crazy all over these spots. And so there are ways you can adjust, but in general, what I find is that the fishing is just going to be a little bit tougher. And also, the best fishing is going to be in the first like hour to 2 of the morning. And so if you can get out there really early, which I didn't on this day, got out there at like 9 o'clock, which was a mistake, huge mistake. But if I had pulled up on some of these spots at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., probably would have crushed them. And, if I keep going through, here's another spot. It was just loaded with fish. I was seeing fish everywhere on the graph, and I would normally expect to catch these fish. But again, see all the boat wake up here? All that is the boat wake. And when you see that on your graph, you see all this like crap up near the surface, that's the wake of the boats getting kicked up. These spots are going to be really hard to catch fish on, especially if they're not super deep. Now, if these fish were down here in 30, 40, 50 feet, they would be catchable because these fish are a lot less affected by the boat wakes. But when they're up here in 20 foot, those boat wakes, especially when there's lots of big wake boats and stuff, it will ruin these areas. So anyways, I think that's pretty much it for me tonight. I'm just going to try to go through a few questions here, and I'm actually going to trying to finish up here for tonight. I'm pretty tired, and I need to drive back up to Northwest Arkansas, or down to Central Arkansas tomorrow, and I'm going to be doing some on-the-water fishing lessons down there at Lake Dardanelle. Also going to be fishing on Lake Dardanelle, trying to catch some big bass there. And I'm also going to be doing a preview show for the Forest Wood Cup on Lake Hamilton. And so I'm going to go over there. Lake Hamilton's a lake I fish all the time. And I'm going to do a little pre-show, I guess, or like a teaser show of some of the best patterns, places to fish, things like that. Who knows, maybe the pros will even use some of that stuff too. I might be helping out a couple of the guys who are maybe watching my YouTube videos to catch some fish for the Forest Wood Cup. But anyways, a couple questions here. So Maximus Klein says, how long do fish school on the same spot? Depends lake to lake. A lot of time they don't always they don't always stay in one spot for a set period of time per lake. So some lakes, you might find that the bass schools will stay on a spot all summer long, the entire summer. In some lakes, they may only stay for 2-3 weeks. On Table Rock, I've found that the fish only stay there for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then they move and they change. And like Lake Dardanelle in Central Arkansas, which is dirty water, shallow lake, same way. Those fish only stay on those offshore spots strong for 2-3 weeks. So that would be kind of my guess. About 2 to 3 weeks would be a good rule of thumb. And then Kid Iraq with the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. He said, for being a pain in your bass, Johnny. My success is yours. Sir Contour Whisperer. Hey, no problem. No, don't worry about it at all. I'm just super busy. Sorry if I can't get back to all the emails as quick as I want to. My email box is literally just flooded with stuff, guys. You have no idea. It's daunting. It's like I thought I got a lot of emails when I was working in corporate and getting emails from just everybody. I was like kind of the middleman for like 3 different companies that work with Walmart, and I was a supplier myself, and so it was all craziness. I was getting like 150 emails a day sometimes. I thought that was crazy, but I feel like I'm getting like maybe not that many now, because some of them I could just ignore, but like these I want to try to get to all of them. And so even if I'm getting like 50 emails a day, it's like, whoa, my mind's blowing up. So anyways, I'm trying to get back to as many of you guys as I can, and so just don't worry, I'm not trying to ignore you, and I'm just trying to get back as quick as possible. I'm pretty behind all the time on it though, trying to get the content out and everything. I know you guys understand. 200 people up, which is awesome. I'm glad too. And then JT says, can't even get back to my Instagram DM. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure if I like people sliding into my DMs too much, so I kind of stay away from that because that only causes trouble. I know you're talking about though, JT. And then we got Karak saying overtime pay. 254 people. That's awesome. That's really cool. Appreciate everyone jumping on. Even I feel like a lot of people are jumping on later. I can't start these streams any later, guys, or I'm gonna like fall asleep at the monitor. But I'm glad that everyone is joining in, even at the end. So let's see if we got some app fish to moments going here. Why are fish showing up on my 2D, but they don't show up in my down imaging? The sensitivity is at 15, contrast is at 13. If they do show, they are faint and hard to see. That is very interesting. With the down imaging, what I found is that you might not be setting your sounds like with that you're using a Humminbird Nate. Try to set your sharpness to medium. That will make all those fish pop. If your sharpness is set to off, a lot of guys, like a lot of the reps and stuff for Humminbird, they'll tell you the wrong settings, or they tell you settings at least that I don't like, that I would never use. So if your graph doesn't have the sharpness setting for your down imaging set sharpness to medium, and all those fish are gonna pop. I guarantee it. Just try that, and that will work. And then Timo says, do rivers have thermoclines? They will if you go way back in the backwaters, but if they're a deep backwater. But on the main river, there's so much current and stuff, I think it just kind of, the water's moving so much that you don't really get the thermocline, or it doesn't really impact the fish that much. Though I think I've seen it when like there's really, really like no current on the river, or very low current, you will see a thermocline set up in the mouths of bays and pockets and stuff. Let's see here. Get some questions. Seeing too many fish moments, which is good. And then I wonder if Johnny will do a one-on-one Packer game day breakdown this season. Well, now that the new Madden game has come out and Aaron Rodgers is the 7th best ranked quarterback in the game, apparently. Patrick Mahomes is number 1, so apparently our quarterback is on the decline. Also, he doesn't like our new coach. Apparently, he won't talk to him. So, Packers are going to be a mess this year. I'm not really looking forward to that. But we always talk about I'm always here for the Go Pack. I need to stay optimistic, even though there's not that much to be too optimistic about with the Packers nowadays. Let me see here. It's all shout-outs. Thanks again to everyone who was giving me shout-outs in the comments about our fishing lessons. Again, if you guys do want to book those, fishthemoment.com. It really helped me out too as I'm growing my business. I need to get a certain quota every week of fishing lessons to be able to keep doing this and making a living. And you guys have been awesome signing up for them. And so I really, really appreciate all the support. And I know that everyone has been getting a lot out of them and they've been great. I'm getting better and better every time I do them. One, just because I'm getting more practice doing them, and also because I'm fishing more so I can share even more information, and so it's just going to keep getting better and better. And so again, thank you for everyone who's here at the beginning, starting this out with the new business and all of that, and all the support, especially guys doing the super chats. We got Stu, Daniel, Keith, Butch, Kidarak. Thank you guys so much for that. And I did hit 100 Patreon members on my Patreon page. I haven't really made any announcements about that yet because I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around everything. But I am going to try to do a meetup and a full day session for my Patreon members who are there for the 100 Patreon subscribers. So if you are a Patreon member, I'm going to be getting to that. I've not been doing as much for the Patreon members as I wanted to. And so I'm going to make sure I start getting back into that here in the next couple months as stuff starts to slow down. So again, appreciate all the support from Patreon members. It's been super helpful to get this business off the ground. It also helps me pay my rent and stuff, which is super helpful as well. So thank you so much for that. And I really appreciate the support, and more benefits and stuff will be coming. I know I keep saying that. And again, I'm only 6 weeks into my new business. And so I'm trying to get everything up off the ground, and some things are falling through the cracks, but hopefully all of the cracks will be filled. We'll get some, what is that stuff called? The tape, the flex tape. We'll get the flex tape and the flex seal. We'll seal up that boat and we'll sail off into the sunset. I don't know what I'm talking about, guys. I don't know why 205 people are on still watching me blabber, but I think I'm going to call it a night. We're at 1 hour, and I don't think I got any more left in me. You can probably hear my energy is dipping. But Clint, looking forward to August 3rd as well. And let's see here. Got some Go Pack. Okay. Let's see here. Hopefully that helps though. But anyways, yep, I'll be good. So that'll be good. So again, thank you guys so much. Sorry, I'm already out of it, but thank you guys so much for checking out the live stream. Really appreciate everyone tuning in. Hope you learned something from the stream, and I'll be back again next Tuesday as always, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for their Fish in the Moment live stream. And I'm going to be showing you all my Sonar recordings, Navionics, all my spots from Lake Dardanelle and Lake Hamilton in Central Arkansas. So some new lakes to look at, new techniques, new things to talk about. Pumped about that. So see you guys next week, and good luck fishing this upcoming weekend.